So welcome to the AI Build versus Buy Bakeoff. My name is Bhavana Thudi. I'm the founder of Magi, and I'm joined today by David Van Everen, VP of Marketing at RingCentral. Hi, David. Great to have you here.
Hi, Bhavana. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. So, David, we are at a very unique moment in history, right? So, AI has dramatically lowered the barrier to building. Today, a single person can build what once required entire teams. So you can spin up agents and workflows on your own without really waiting for specialized skills or centralized tools or even approvals. And because of that, many organizations are asking a very familiar question. Should we build internally or buy a purpose-built solution? David and I here today are going to break down what this means across a few core pillars and talk through some real trade-offs marketing teams are navigating in an AI native world. So let's begin with really the decentralized innovation that's happening right now. So when AI becomes accessible to everyone on the team, and now what that does is that it levels the playing field, and every single person now has new power in their hands. And so, David, why don't you kick us off by telling us what this means for RingCentral? RingCentral is operating at a massive global scale, serving hundreds of thousands of businesses and millions of users across the globe. So, what does this shift actually feel like inside the largest enterprises?
Yeah, great question. And, I think in order to understand the way it feels at a large enterprise, we probably should also look back at the very beginning for most marketing teams when ChatGPT was first launched. And I was at a startup back then, and we all pretty quickly recognized that this was going to really change the game for marketing and enable new marketing superpowers that we didn't previously possess. And so my team was smaller then, and I felt like we should really, make it a daily practice. So we had weekly goals, and we were sharing our experiences on Fridays to basically teach each other what we had learned during the week. And that was our way at that startup of really adopting AI and beginning to explore how it could be used at scale. Fast forward a couple of years to RingCentral, and RingCentral made a similar commitment with its employees across the entire company, not just marketing, where it essentially mandated that we continue to set goals for ourselves as far as AI adoption and innovation internally to gain greater employee productivity. And that has continued to today to the extent where it has executive and even board level visibility in terms of our ability to leverage AI as an enterprise. We're an AI forward company, so we incorporate AI into our products, and there's a lot of in-house expertise. So that probably helps us with adopting AI at scale. But it's a daily practice for us. We've made significant inroads in using AI in production at scale, both in marketing and in other areas in the go-to-market teams, for example. And that expertise kind of compounds on itself, right? So now we have an AI center of excellence where we have a number of employees that representing a critical mass of AI expertise that we can all tap into when we get stuck in our own AI adoption journey. So that I think has really put RingCentral as more of an early adopter and a pioneer in leveraging AI across the enterprise.
Awesome. That is really impressive, David, with large scale, like at RingCentral, this innovation is happening on a daily basis. I think you spoke a lot about decentralized innovation that's happening across the company. If you can bring it a little bit about what does it mean to standardize this and at the same time accelerate as an overall organization. And because the goal is not to limit the innovation, right? You still need to keep that going, but ensure that we have some standardized way to accelerate how this is happening?
Yeah, very good question. So, standardization is part of how you achieve scale with AI. And so RingCentral has adopted corporate standards for the AI toolchain that we use internally. Of course, like every enterprise, we have an InfoSec team that is ensuring that we use AI safely and compliantly. And then beyond that, every employee in the company has a login to the AI toolchain that we've selected for internal use. And additional platforms can be requested as needed for specialized tasks. So there is a natural decentralization that happens because of that. If we think about the corporate standard platform as, kind of like the substrate for decentralized AI development, usage, and adoption, that substrate permeates through the entire company, and there are lots of individual efforts related to AI, and that happens every day in the background. But then there are some initiatives that really do become kind of like company or corporate initiatives where there could be a small team that forms. Typically, the AI and data science team could be involved. And there's kind of like an AI initiative that coalesces around that center of excellence and key individuals, contributors, stakeholders that are working on an AI related initiative. And so that could be any number of things. It could be building a marketing app. It could be building even older forms of AI, like predictive models, or even combining predictive models and AI, LLM-based AI, to analyze both structured and unstructured data together and gain insights into our business in ways that we couldn't achieve before.
Awesome. And as marketing leaders like you are actively encouraging experimentation while also ensuring that from standardization across the company, can you speak a little bit about something we hear from marketing leaders all the time is that this has really enabled every team to build different things on their own. Those that are closest to the problem are building gems, they're building GPTs and custom AI workflows across the organization. And at some point, leaders are stepping back and saying, all of this needs to come together. And I'll tell you a little bit about our perspective at Magi, because you hear this all the time on LinkedIn. We used Claude Code or Figma Make to create like dozens of landing pages, and they looked polished and on brand. And honestly, that part is real, that drafting has become incredibly fast, right? But operating like a full production assembly line is something else, right? Because then you have to translate what's happening there from, let's say, from a Claude Code or a Figma Make into your actual production environment, which could be HubSpot, Salesforce, and putting it in your CMS systems like WordPress and all the stitching together that has to happen in real marketing production workflows, because those systems really don't talk to each other as well. And you have to make sure it's not just the systems, but the teams are also moving together. You have your content teams, your design teams, and they have different libraries, etc. So this is, from our perspective, like what we see is that this is often an inflection point when teams begin to realize that they need a purpose-built solution, and either they have the resources to build this purpose-built solution, so you have a full production level assembly line that is leveraging the best of AI and the best of the expertise within the team to accomplish what needs to be done. And at Magi, we call this the brand operating system. It's the operating system that ensures that teams are starting from the same foundation. They're able to get faster drafts. There's also like seamless handoffs, and you can actually run a full production line. And that eventually becomes like how you drive organizational productivity and impact. Yeah.
Exactly. That's definitely like the essence of the buy proposition, right? Is that it's prepackaged, built by experts, experts in a domain like marketing, right? So for Magi, the expertise is part of the offering, right? And it's a big part of what adds value for Magi customers. And so RingCentral is maybe in a more fortunate position where build can be a viable option because of that internal expertise with AI tooling. But this is, what we're here to talk about today is, the pros and cons of the build versus buy conundrum. So it definitely is company specific, right? And so, because AI is part of the culture and DNA of RingCentral, a build approach may make more sense for us, but for many organizations, probably the majority, a buy approach would absolutely make sense. If we think about, like you mentioned, drafting content for marketing, and that's kind of like AI 101 these days. And so putting it all together, like you described, is really like PhD level AI adoption at scale. And most marketing organizations aren't there across the board. They may have pockets of AI expertise. Maybe people are enthusiasts and have developed a skill set around that, but it's very difficult for a large marketing organization to take the contribution of those enthusiasts and make it a scaled out program that everyone in the marketing organization would be able to utilize every day for their work.
And when you talk about this happening at scale for the enterprise, there's really organizational transformation, right? And we're seeing some real ones happening over the past year that we're also working with. Now, David, what does transformation really mean inside an enterprise marketing organization?
Yeah, there's an example from yesterday. So I was asked to launch something completely new. My team and I were asked to do this, and it represented a massive amount of work, something that even a year ago I would have said was impossible. And instead, what we were able to do was leverage our AI tooling and produce high quality marketing work. I can't describe exactly what we did, but let's just say it was high volume, tons of content, and something that in the past, before a year ago, would have taken even longer, probably several weeks. And we were able to compress that into a single day. So that acceleration is the marketing transformation that's happening now. And I think every company sees the potential for that kind of a transformation within their own marketing org. And those are kind of like the guiding lights or signposts that we have, that there's this massive potential for productivity gains and even quality gains in marketing over over this journey that we're on with AI, right? And so for some companies, those milestones they happen frequently, they happen at scale across the entire marketing org. And then for other companies, they're less frequent, but still powerful reminders of the potential transformation that can occur within the organization. And so at RingCentral, we can do something like that quickly, given the fluency we have with AI. And then for another organization where they don't see those changes as frequently, that's where a company and a solution like Magi can help get them getting those wins much more frequently than they have been able to achieve on their own with the AI tools they use.
You talked about productivity, but also time compression. And that is a huge win. We've lived through the era where we used to take weeks to ship a campaign, and all of that is really getting compressed into days. I want to talk about organizational transformation a little bit differently. Like, we look at it across three different vectors. Definitely, like, velocity and quality are a core part of it. The other one is autonomy. And I think you mentioned this in a lot of different ways, like how teams are able to do it. And I think you mentioned somebody who was doing it for the labor of love. There was no like a professional job role that you were supposed to do this. You do this because you really love experimenting, because you see this new power in your hands, right? So we feel like autonomy is the leading indicator for organizational transformation, because when you're looking at autonomy and when autonomy increases at an individual level, then velocity and quality and time compression, they also tend to follow soon after. And what does autonomy really mean for us? Looking at it as the rise of the full stack operator. When you look at someone who's not just looking at like their own domain and their own task, and they're now starting to operate at a full stack level. They're not narrowly specialized anymore. They think strategically, they execute across tools, they're able to ship campaigns, they're able to understand both the creative side as well as the analytical side, at least at the level that they need to. So they are able to now use the full power of AI, right? Because now they can take what, without really having any dependency, they're able to, let's say, go from an idea to shipping an iteration all on their own, right? And AI is helping not just this full stack operator, but it's also helping you scale your best marketer. It's helping you scale the best designer, and it's helping you scale your campaign tactics and the leadership there. So that's how you get more full stack operators in an organization. And I think it's now unicorn hire. Everyone wants to hire full stack operators and then build the organization around them. And I think that organizations that operate this way will fundamentally look very different in the future. Now, that is real transformation, and personally, what I'm really excited about.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so much to unpack here with organizational transformation and the way the marketing role has changed. And so, in your conversations with marketing orgs, you're probably finding that there's a shift from specialists to generalists, right? You talk about full stack marketers, and that's really, the embodiment of that shift that's happening. And it's because AI is able to take care of some of the work that was previously, the kind of like the domain of those specialists. If we think about an email marketer, they kind of worked in an email marketing silo, and you turned out emails on a calendar and all of the rest. But now email is part of an integrated campaign, an integrated marketing motion, and the email marketer has AI tools that can help take the heavy lifting out of like crafting the emails and all of the rest. And that frees them up to focus more on the strategy behind the email and how the email channel can be complementary to this integrated marketing motion, whether it's for an individual campaign or just as part of evergreen marketing programs. And so that's just one example, but really for every marketing discipline, that same thing is happening where marketers are becoming more aware of how their particular channel or function fits into the larger whole of all of marketing. And the AI tooling enables greater cohesion and greater coordination across the entire marketing team in that way. So that's definitely one aspect of the transformation. Then there's the transformation of individual career trajectories. So you mentioned a person on my team, and yeah, in his case, it absolutely was a labor of love, where he was able to produce a very robust campaign creation app in very little time, maybe a couple of weeks. And he presented it to the entire marketing org, including leadership, and everyone was blown away. And, the next step is getting that to production use, right? That's probably the harder part, but that's where, we RingCentral has already built a muscle around adopting the AI related work products created by individual team members. But, that person on my team has a tremendous skill set now in AI that he didn't have 2 years ago. And so for him personally, it's been career transformation as well as an organizational transformation for RingCentral.
Yeah, so David, you bring up two things. Like this person, or generally when you talk about full stack operators or the experts in the domain, if you're already an expert in the domain and you have AI fluency, together that becomes extremely powerful, right? So one of the core things, and also as we hire within the team, is do you have love for the craft? Even this AI, of course, there's AI changing constantly and you constantly have to adapt and learn. Do you really have love for the craft of marketing, and it is multiple subdomains, could be design, could be different things. But that, I think, is the true compounding factor. What we see is that when people do have that passion and the curiosity to keep experimenting, and then they have access to the AI tools, then great things happen. So really looking at both expertise and the AI fluency, being comfortable trying different things, failing, experimenting, always trying to find the right balance is what really gives like a huge impact. I think we could shift gears to like this point around, you brought AI innovation, or just the fact that AI is moving incredibly fast. And every week there's something new that's out there. And for enterprise teams, how do you keep up with that without constantly breaking, like, let's say, what's already working, or just making sure that this is phased in a manner that can be productionized, but also have a healthy amount of experimentation. So you're always like keeping up with the innovation and incorporating that into the business. How do you think about curating AI innovation at enterprise scale?
Yeah, that's a big challenge, probably a very big challenge for the RingCentral IT department and InfoSec department, where they need to support this fast-moving ecosystem of AI technology. And for us, while we've adopted a corporate standard, we still retain flexibility, right? So people can request additional tools if it's pertinent to their job. They need to do research. A lot of our product teams would, I'm sure, have access to multiple AI platforms and tools, depending on whether you're using AI for coding versus AI for content and other analysis. Your selection of tools could change. I mentioned the person that works on my team, he used Vertex AI, which isn't part of our standard tool chain for the corporate standard, but it is definitely one of the tool chains that's in use at RingCentral. I've used Google AI Studio, so it's similar, but not as versatile and powerful as Vertex AI, right? So we can kind of pick and choose those tools and learn at our own pace with some of those things. We do foster a culture of, again, through those goals, which now are basically translate into quarterly MBOs for AI adoption and new AI initiatives at scale within the company. Part of that is a learning component, right? So I think everyone on my team remains curious about AI innovations, continues to develop inside and outside of work on their own, because all of us have recognized how important it is to our own careers to continue to develop this AI skill set that's emerging as the primary skill set, not just for marketing, but for most white collar roles. It's going to be the way it is already, really, the way that people work today.
Absolutely. So I think at RingCentral scale, you're continuously evaluating, you're allowing experimentation. And I think that's very impressive. I think most organizations can't continuously evaluate this on an ongoing basis without slowing themselves down. So that balance is really important. And in some ways, the purpose-built platforms exist to absorb that change, because that's why the startup survives. You're constantly there to curate the best AI across the stack and then test it and integrate it so that innovation happens in a scale that is absorbable, but you also don't have to constantly retool your workflows to make this work. And absolutely, like you said, ultimately the decision is really part of the company DNA. Some organizations are built to own and maintain every layer of the innovation, and others are built to focus on outcomes and let the infrastructure be handled elsewhere, right? So the right answer really depends on who you are as a company and how you create value. We covered a lot of different topics today across curated AI innovation, which we just spoke about. Love your thoughts around like the decentralized innovation versus how do you standardize acceleration as an organization. I think there's a lot to be said about transformation in organization, and we're like absolutely in a very unique point in history. So to close today, we can each speak about maybe one signal, David, that you're most closely watching over within your own organization over the next 6 to 12 months that will indicate real marketing transformation?
Yeah. So I think for me, it would be fully automated a major workflow inside of marketing, right? So if we think about something like creating a campaign from start to finish, being able to automate that entire workflow is probably what would signal a milestone to me that we've actually achieved something like truly transformational and meaningful with AI, because that, that's essentially encapsulating the contributions and the efforts of maybe a dozen or more people and fully automating that work. If that can be done basically in AI time and with human quality, then that's basically going to completely change the way marketing organizations operate. And so for me, it's really that ability to automate an entire workflow rather than an individual task or part of that workflow.
I would agree with that absolutely. And I think to build upon that, I would look at the same goal, but more from a leading indicator perspective to understand what's happening right now to enable that ultimate outcome. And the signal I watch for as it relates to AI transformation goes back to autonomy. When a full stack operator can take a business goal, like you said, a campaign goal, and you can take it to outcome without handoffs or stalls, then that autonomy becomes real. And how many hops do you have to really ship an iteration of that entire campaign, right? So that is happening in different workflows today, like smaller workflows, right? And the larger you go, I think that really is going to happen at scale. So I think a great way to close, David. So thank you so much for joining me. We spoke a lot about build versus buy and in the context of AI and in the context of marketing. But I think a lot of the principles that we spoke about are very applicable to every other function and what's happening generally with AI transformation. Thank you for sharing your stories and thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.